and we are back to break down episode 5 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and wow, what a masterpiece. The portrayal of the climatic battle was so incredibly brutal and real. From the limited view of Dunk's helm to the ringing muffled audio, this episode's portrayal of the violence and realism of the situation was so disturbing, such a perfect encapsulation of some of the themes George R. R. Martin was trying to convey with this story. Juxtaposing the climatic battle of the season with flashbacks from Dunk's youth was such an amazing writing choice, showing us the influences that shaped Dunk's character and brought him to the very place he finds himself in now. No matter what, Dunk will always get back up and fight for what's right. The episode begins with Baelor briefing Dunk's team on strategy for the battle. He promises that he'll try his best to keep the Kingsguard members on Aerian's team away from the rest of the party, since they're forbidden to attack him, since he's heir to the throne. Dunk and Raymond, however, find themselves nervously puking, and justifiably so given what we see next. As soon as the battle begins, it immediately descends into brutal chaos. Dunk, paralyzed in shock and fear, is quickly stabbed and smashed in the head by Aerian, knocking him out and sending him flashing back to his youth. This flashback shows us a young Dunk surviving on the streets of Flea Bottom, the poorest slum in King's Landing. While we did see glimpses of Flea Bottom in Game of Thrones, this episode did an incredible job showing us just how absolutely awful of a place it is. From suffering and misery everywhere to claustrophobia and filth coating everything, its close proximity to the Red Keep and the affluence and throne within become all the more ironic. The flashback begins with Dunk looting dead bodies on the beach, along with his best friend and romantic partner, Rafe. They're searching the bodies for valuable items they could sell, since these bodies belong to soldiers from noble houses, fallen in one of the final battles of the First Blackfire Rebellion. The Blackfires, the rebelling offshoot branch of House Targaryen, have lost, giving the core Targaryen family continued control over Westeros. Huffing copium, Dunk thinks the war's end will change things and that life in King's Landing will be better now that there's peace. Through anecdotes of how conflicts are handled in Flea Bottom, Rafe reminds him that people always come back for revenge. The war may be over for now, but as she says, no one forgets shit. I'll take a quick pause here to say that the actor that got to play Dunk, Bamber Todd, was absolutely perfect. He got Dunk's mannerisms, way of speaking, and expressions down to a T. Back in the mess that is Flea Bottom, Rafe and Dunk sell their haul for some coin. We find out that they're saving up for passage on a ship heading to the Free Cities. If you remember from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, the Free Cities are a collection of independent city-states on the coast of Essos, the continent to Westeros' east, located on the other side of the Narrow Sea. The sad irony of their dream is that, in all odds, life in the Free Cities would be exactly the same for them as in King's Landing, if not worse. Not only would they likely end up in slums very similar to Flea Bottom, they wouldn't know the language, making it even harder to survive. But they're kids, and they need a dream to hang on to while living in such misery. While Rafe is very gung-ho about this plan, Dunk is hesitant to leave King's Landing. He guises the culprit of his hesitancy as concerns toward the aforementioned possibility of life just being worse in the Free Cities. However, he's really covering up for something deeper here. While he knows his dad was most likely hanged, he really doesn't know what happened to his mom. Despite all logic telling him she's dead, he still hangs on to the hope that she'll come back for him one day, and if she did, she wouldn't be able to find him if he leaves King's Landing. In response, Rafe affirms their love, reminding him that family won't just come to him. Nothing will come to him if he sits around and waits. If he wants a better life, a true family with her, his found family, he'll have to go out there and make it for himself. Unfortunately, the two find out that, despite all the scavenging that they've done and the money they've earned, the price for passage across the Narrow Sea has doubled, and the money goal they thought they had already reached has now become unattainable yet again. Ironically, if Rafe were to leave and Dunk were to stay behind as he sort of wanted, she could have afforded passage just for herself if the broker wasn't lying, of course. But that idea doesn't even cross her mind. She and Dunk are bound together. One won't ever leave the other behind. The affordability of passage isn't their only problem. Throughout this flashback, they're constantly followed and harassed by a corrupt member of the City Watch, or the Gold Cloaks as they're also known. If you remember from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, the Gold Cloaks are essentially the police force of King's Landing. Daemon was in charge of them at the outset of House of the Dragon, and we already saw how corrupted they were starting to become under his leadership. This Gold Cloak, Alistair, is yet another example in a story filled with them of someone that is supposed to be a force for good doing exactly the opposite, becoming an active problem for the very people they're sworn to protect. Alistair serves as a very strong parallel to Aerion in this sense, someone corrupted by their power, using the position from which they are supposed to protect the innocent to abuse them with no consequences. Things come to a head with Alistair when he robs Dunk and Rafe of all the money they had saved, sending them back to square one. In spite, Rafe pickpockets Alistair's knife, which causes him to flip out and kill her. Rafe, Dunk's best friend and the love of his life, dies in his arms. In that moment, he snaps and attacks Alistair, perfectly paralleling his snapping and attacking of Aerion when he was torturing Tansel in episode 3. While Dunk couldn't save Rafe from someone abusing their power here, he goes on to save Tansel, even if it does cost him everything. It seems like Alistair is about to give Dunk the same fate as Rafe, when out from a building bursts a drunken Sir Arlen, who kills Alistair and saves Dunk, all while puking. With nothing left for him now that his partner is gone, Dunk begins to fixate on Sir Arlen. Dunk can't help but admire him, even though he's a drunken mess. After all, he's Dunk's first glimpse at someone with a vow to protect the innocent that actually sticks to it, rather than abusing his title. We see just how much of a mess Arlen actually is when Dunk decides to leave King's Landing to trail him. Without Rafe as his compass, Dunk was aimless, subconsciously wanted to stick to the only source of good he could still find. We see Arlen spending his time on the road excessively drinking, ranting in Dothraki through his drunken stupor. If you recall from Game of Thrones, Dothraki is the language of the SOC culture Daenerys was forced to assimilate into in Season 1. It's a bit weird that Arlen would know Dothraki as a Westerosi hedge knight, given that their domain is located far into Essos, an entirely different continent. But who knows, maybe he's just speaking gibberish even in Dothraki. We also see him cut himself on his own knife in his drunken sleep. All's to say, it seems that he needs a squire like Dunk just as much as Dunk needs a mentor like him. It's only when Dunk eventually collapses, likely from a combination of his wound from his fight with Alistair, starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion, that Arlen decides to actually approach the boy that had been trailing him. "Get up," he tells him, shooting Dunk out of his flashback and back into consciousness in the midst of the present battle. It's Dunk directly fighting Aerion now, and it's absolutely brutal. The two destroy each other with countless blows and stabs. Dunk eventually collapses, seemingly on the verge of death if not entering its throes already. But the voice of Egg screaming for him to get up, coupled with flashes of Arlen telling him to do the same all those years ago, gives him the last boost of energy he needs to get back up and defeat Aerion. Dunk finally gets Aerion to verbally yield, but no one but him is able to hear those words over the roar of the battle. This leaves Dunk faced with yet another moral quandary. He could kill Aerion right then and there, taking an absolute monster out of the world like Arlen did with Alistair. No one would know Aerion yielded. He could get away with it completely in the chaos of the battle. Or he could stand firm to his honor, not further harming someone that's already yielded. Being the kind of person he is, he abstains, and instead drags Aerion to the front of the viewing stands where everyone can hear the yielding. The battle is then called. Dunk's team has won. Steely Pate and Raymond rush to bring Dunk out of the field and under cover, where we learn that this victory was not without loss. Both Humphrey Harding and Humphrey Beesbury died in the battle. While still hanging on to life, Raymond and Dunk appear heavily injured, likely needing extensive medical care. Then, joining them under the awning arrives Baelor, badly beaten down himself. Despite all the immense pain of his injuries, Dunk kneels to Baelor, pledging that he will be his man, serving him from now on. However, just like Dunk and Rafe fleeing to the Free Cities, this is a timeline that's just not meant to be. Baelor's helmet was heavily damaged during the battle, which he attributes to his brother Maekar. Upon Raymond and Steely Pate removing Baelor's helmet, we see that a huge chunk of his head is missing. Baelor then collapses into Dunk's arms, the life gone from his body. Dunk breaks down holding him, perfectly paralleling when he held Rafe's lifeless body all those years ago. Baelor Targaryen, Hands of the King and heir to the Iron Throne, has died. And that about does it for episode 5. I thought it was a perfect portrayal of the climax to this incredible story, and I'm sad it's already time to see the season come to a close next week. If you enjoyed this breakdown and would like to see more Song of Ice and Fire content of this nature, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next week for the Season 1 finale.